Greetings, everyone. Week 6 has concluded for the VGC Draft League, so just as usual, it's time for some replay review from group number 5, starting us off with Ryu versus TreeDolphin. And I give the advantage to Ryu in this matchup. We've seen this team tear through other teams week after week, at the top of the standings right now, as a matter of fact. Really, what's that, 4 weeks straight so far? Hasn't had a loss since the first week, as a matter of fact. And it's mostly thanks due to the Dragonite, really. Like, while this is a rain team in full force at Pelipper and the Floatzel, Dragonite's done a lot of heavy lifting as far as the damage. With that multi-scale, it puts on a lot of pressure up front, and teams aren't able to, break that multi-scale with like a fake out and then try and KO it right afterwards. For the most part, it's just been left alone to its own devices, just rip through the team with things like Earthquake or Terra Blast flying. On the other hand, TreeDolphin's team, it's got a lot of work to try and cut through here. If they go with the Pelipper, Palafin could take advantage of the rain, even versus the Rotom Wash matchup. Wave Crash in rain, Mystic Water in hero form still does a huge chunk to the Rotom Wash, about 60%, probably even more if we throw Terra Water into the mix. So it's not a free defense from Ryu, in my opinion there. The problem is, how do you position the Palafin? You have to lead with it and then bring it out and back in. And while Dragonite and potentially Floatzel are ripping through your team, that's kind of hard to set up. Now you could look for like a Trick Room angle, but again, it's still hard to get that position there, especially with 3 different fake out / taunt users on the team. They may not get an opportunity to do so. I'm looking at Meowscarada to do a lot of heavy lifting as far as the damage goes, maybe even Toxtricity if it gets a good Terra off, or if it uses something like Choice Scarf. Just outside of Floatzel, help it get ahead of things like a Dragonite and Pelipper and get damage off that way. But then you have to factor in the Terra. So I think TreeDolphin's team is just naturally a step behind this one, though I am excited to see if they have any tricks left in their bag to pull out and get the win here. Let's see it. So I did end up watching this set live, and there are some really weird things going on TreeDolphin's end. So the lineups themselves don't look anything out of the ordinary for what they usually bring, but on Ryu's side, Dragonite, Stonjourner, Pelipper, Floatzel, Gardevoir, and Tinkaton. Meanwhile, TreeDolphin opting for Sableye, Meowscarada, Toedscool, Rapska, Primeape, and Toxtricity. So with our leads, we see Dragonite as per usual as one of the strongest members of Ryu's team, just coming out in the first turns to put pressure out. Side by side with the Gardevoir, likely with Telepathy. Meowscarada and Sableye showing on TreeDolphin's side, and Meowscarada's immediately going to Terra Ice, followed by the Fake Out from Sableye, followed by Terra Blast into the Dragonite, immediately clearing it off the field. Meanwhile, Gardevoir is going to try and get Sableye off the field, but finds a Roselli Berry to reduce the damage from it. Tinkaton coming in to take Dragonite's place, and it's going to put some pressure on the Meowscarada, who immediately flees into the Primeape. Sableye is going to burn it to help mitigate some damage from later, try and salvage the game. Meanwhile, another Moonblast is going to hit Sableye and clear it from the field. Gigaton Hammer gets used up on Primeape, so they can't use it in this following turn as the Terra Ice Meowscarada comes back in, so they may be able to reserve it for one more turn. They launch an Energy Ball, curious enough, into the Terra Steel Gardevoir, who follows up with a Moonblast to immediately KO Primeape before it can even move. Play rough from the Tinkaton because he can't use Gigaton Hammer just yet, and the Rapska comes in to take Primeape's place. One more Energy Ball into the Gardevoir. It's very likely a choice item locking into that, and a Taunt into the Rapska just to shut down any Trick Room options if they were going for that. Gigaton Hammer one more time to clear out the Meowscarada, and it's now a 3v1. Bug Buzz finds Gardevoir, but with the Terra Steel, it's very good at reducing that damage right now, and TreeDolphin's going to go ahead and close the game from there. So we saw some really cool prep from TreeDolphin, opting for the Terra Ice and even the Fake Out just to accommodate for like a potential Focus Sash or the multi-scale, just to immediately get Dragonite off the field. I commented before how a lot of Ryu's wins have come from Dragonite just going unchecked and is allowed to put tons and tons of damage on the board even without Terra, and TreeDolphin recognizing that just immediately gets it off the field. Now from there, they had a little bit of a tough time because Meowscarada is doing a lot of heavy lifting as far as their damage goes, and they've opted for a special attack set with Energy Ball. And I'm not sure that I haven't checked this move pool recently. I'm not sure if it has the options to clear out things like the Tinkaton or like a Terra Steel Gardevoir to try and chew through that. So here we'll go on to the next game just to show you how that one goes. Okay, game number 2 Pokeballs are out, and Primate Meowscarada leading this time for TreeDolphin, Dragonite, and Tinkaton leading for Ryu this time around. So fake out going into the Meowscarada, and that's going to be immediately cleared out by the wing attack follow-up from Dragonite. It's just as soon as his Fire Punch comes out, which is targeted at the Tinkaton. Takes a good chunk, but doesn't quite clear the 50% mark, which is a little bit crucial. But yeah, Meowscarada goes down to that wing attack like I mentioned, and Toedscool takes its spot. Primeape goes for a Terra Poison and a Rage Fist. They meant to use Fire Punch to get some damage down to Tinkaton, possibly even KO it if it was a good roll, but it being left alive means it gets to go for an Ice Hammer, which immediately knocks out the Toedscool. Another wing attack goes into Primeape and critical hits it, activating its Anger Point, which could be scary. The fake out from the Sableye going into the Stonejourner as the Tinkaton has switched out. Meanwhile, Primeape goes for Rage Fist into the Dragonite, which doesn't do enough to even get past the 50% mark and takes a wing attack for the rest of its life. That's just going to clear the rest of the game as the Stonejourner goes for the Rock Slide, followed by the wing attack. And yeah, very, very quick, dominant games from Ryu. Only lost one Pokemon between both games. I think it's mostly just matchup dependent. I think there was, I think the tech from TreeDolphin was pretty cool. Preparation to try and get Dragonite off the field and then play from there. But behind that, the damage and the options to deal with the rest of the team were just generally lacking. Taking another look at the matchup on your screen, just once again, Dragonite, even before the match starts, just putting immense pressure on TreeDolphin's lineup. It's something that I've commented, it's come week after week and has to be dealt with, otherwise it just puts way too much damage on the board. And TreeDolphin's options for like immediately getting it out of play are a little bit limited. Obviously you saw the Terra Blast Ice come out from the Meowscarada. They felt pressured to go into that because even though they have something like Ice Punch from Palafin, you have to watch out for the Terra from Dragonite, and Palafin into that matchup, understandably doesn't feel great since it has to attack into 3 different water types potentially. You also have the Sableye with Burn, with Will-O-Wisp, but Dragonite's been popularly run with a Lumberry even outside of this draft, so that's always a concern. And then if you're looking at something like Dash Bun, maybe use this Play Rough with the multi-scale, considering how how weak Dash Bun's offense actually is. If you activate the potential weakness policy, now you're in a whole different world of hurt. So you don't want to risk that, and you just want to immediately get it off the field, not take 2 or 3 turns to do so. So feeling pressured into that Terra Ice option further limits the team, because once you get past Dragonite, how do you deal with the rest of the team? Like we saw how much trouble they had dealing with the Tinkaton and the Terra Steel Gardevoir in game 1, because there were just no options to hit it. They didn't bring the Primeape with their Fire Punch, which again, that's a limited option in itself, considering Primeape's not getting stab on it. It's a lower base power. So just from the jump, TreeDolphin's at like a huge deficit, has to use a little bit of trickery to kind of climb out of the hole. I think with more use of the Sableye potentially, going for like a Light Screen or Reflect, helping support the team that way may have been to their benefit. They might have even been able to safely get up Trick Room in that sense. Maybe run like a Mental Herb on the Rapsco or the Spiritomb might have been a way to kind of overcome the matchup. I also would have liked to have seen Toxtricity, and I think kind of crucially, Trick Room would have been beneficial to that purpose, because right now Ryu just has like full speed control over the match, and Toxtricity just needs like a safe position to get in and wreak havoc with the Boom Burst or Overdrive. Now TreeDolphin did share their team with us, so we can take a quick look here. We do see the Roselli Berry on the Sableye, again, well prepped to them, factoring in the Play Rough and the Moonblast from Tinkaton and Gardevoir respectively. We even see, of course, Sunny Day to counteract the potential drizzle from Pelipper. They're not using the rain for themselves, so you might as well have an option to clear it out just in case, right? We saw the Meowscarada with the Terra Blast Ice, and it is a special attack oriented Meowscarada. Wasn't choice focused, just seemed that way because their option was limited. It was either Energy Ball, Terra Blast, or Flower Trick to actually do damage, so all you can really do is do Energy Ball there. But they do also have grassy terrain, which I find interesting. The Dragonite has typically been running Earthquake next to the Telepathy Gardevoir, so if they went like Terra Ground Earthquake, that's going to mitigate the damage from the rest of their team there. Though if the plan was to immediately KO the Dragonite, that wasn't necessarily a priority. If there was another option that they might have been able to have, like a Protect for some outplays, maybe even Trick Room, since they're running this Focus Sash on the Meowscarada, that could have been a potential option, I think. And then we saw the Primate. Now next to the Meowscarada, that's the other reason that they're running special, is to reduce the damage from the Flower Trick. So just in case they're forced to go Terra Ice, they bring the Primate in the back. They don't get the Terra Poison to resist the Flower Trick while activating Anger Point. So running the modest version of Meowscarada reduces the amount of physical damage that they'll do to the Primate and keep it much safer. Yeah, outside of that, we don't see anything out of the ordinary. Toadskull with Spore and Rage Powder like usual. The Rapska with the Lepid Berry and Revival Blessing that TreeDolphin likes so much. And the Choice Specs Toxtricity, like I mentioned, with some speed control or with a Trick Room up, this could have been a real threat to Ryu's team, I believe. They kind of have to watch out for the Wide Guard from Stonjourner or the Pelipper in that sense. So I can see some general concern there, but yeah, those are my thoughts. Either way, congrats to Ryu for winning this week. They are locked in one of the top 2 seeds of the going into playoffs. Right now, they're number 1 in the standings. They have to fight the number 2 seed in week number 7 to determine what the final seeding will be. TreeDolphin, on the other hand, has a shot still to make it into the playoffs. They're fighting for the 4th seed, and that depends on the events of week number 7, including a potential loss from myself. So we'll see what goes down there, and we'll continue coverage as usual. Our next matchup is going to be Darkbadger versus Quaylectra, and this one's just going to be as unpredictable as usual, just based on the way these players selected their drafts. Quaylectra probably going to use the Torkoal Oranguru as usual, but after picking up Zoroark, that's been throwing all the leads out of whack, and I think it's going to be crucial because even though Darkbadger can risk putting King Gambit up at the top of the lineup just to potentially deal with the Oranguru, perhaps with a good Terra to resist the Torkoal. If the Zoroark leads, then that puts them in a little bit of trouble as well, since it's not only the Torkoal that could be there, it's a Zoroark with Flamethrower poised to 2-hit KO the King Gambit. That being said, Darkbadger has plenty of tools to work around with. If they get the Trick Room up, AV Mudsdale looks insanely good here in my opinion. Morgrim could opt for like a Light Screen Reflect set to further buff up the Mudsdale, and even Volcarona, like outside of the Trick Room, or even inside the Trick Room, just becoming a bulky threat that's able to take advantage of the sun itself with its own fiery dances and or heat wave. Yeah, I think I'll give Darkbadger the advantage on this one, but I don't think it is an auto win for Darkbadger, if that makes any sense. Either way, let's take a look at these matches just to see what's on the player's mind. Game number 1, we have on Darkbadger's side Jumpluff, King Gambit, Volcarona, Mudsdale, Clawitzer, Morgrim versus Quaylectra's Oranguru, Zoroark, Torkoal, Scovillain, Palisand, and Raichu. Jumpluff's an interesting option here. It does get access to Chlorophyll, but you don't necessarily need the speed control unless you're expecting the Scovillain to show up under Sun here. Meanwhile, we're going to see the lead of Torkoal and Oranguru versus Jumpluff and Mudsdale here. Mudsdale going to immediately Terra Ground. Oh, and we see the Rain Dance come out from Jumpluff instead, and the Trick come from the Oranguru. tossing over a flame orb and taking away the assault vest from the Mudsdale. So a lot of cool tech going on through here, and of course that wasn't Oranguru, that was Zoroark as per usual, messing up the leads here. So now we have a Terra Ground Mudsdale burned under rain. Was able to take out the Zoroark as a result though, so not the end of the world. Meanwhile, we see the Jumpluff switching out for King Gambit, who takes the Chilling Water from the actual Oranguru and gets a +1 boost due to the Defiant there. High horsepower going into the Scoville and still does a huge chunk of damage despite the burn. The Oranguru is going to escape and set up the Drought from the Torkoal, which then activates the Chlorophyll on Scovillain, who finishes off the Mudsdale with a Seed Bomb. Ironhead going to come out from the King Gambit, do a little bit of chip damage to the Torkoal here. Jumpluff coming back in, no doubt, to set up the rain here. Sucker Punch coming out from the King Gambit to clear out the Scovillain. And yes, we do see the Rain Dance, which is going to reduce the damage of the Eruption and activate the Citrus Berry on the King Gambit. So they're sitting pretty healthy here. And then the Jumpluff taking almost no damage at all. Oranguru coming in with Terra Dark. Curiously enough here, Sucker Punch is going to fail. Probably aimed at the Torkoal there as it protects, and we can see the Pollen Puff from the Jumpluff to heal it back up to full. Trick Room coming out from the Oranguru. Now it's Terra Dark, so it's going to take very little damage from the Kowtow Cleaves that are aimed at it, but Sucker Punch coming out from the King Gambit is going to go into Torkoal and further reduce the damage from the Eruption, which is already gutted thanks to the rain being set up by Jumpluff. We see the Eruption Instruct Eruption combo that we're so familiar with. Jumpluff just content to keep pollen puffing the King Gambit and keep it healthy throughout all these Trick Room turns. Another Protect from the Torkoal. A Chilling Water into the Jumpluff, not going to be doing too much damage even in the rain. And we see a Terra Blast from the King Gambit. Don't know what Terra is yet. It hasn't used its Terra in this game, but they feel a little bit pressured to go ahead and use that rather than a Kowtow Cleave if they have it. May not have it at all. Sucker Punch one more time is going to finish off the Torkoal, leaving the Oranguru on its own here. It's not going to be able to do enough damage to clear out the game, so Quaylectra is going to go ahead and forfeit here and move us on to game 2. So a lot of cool tech just from the turn 1. Like we see Zoroark coming in one more time, throwing everything out of whack, causing some havoc and confusion for the opponent. We saw the immediate Trick Flame Orb into the Mudsdale to take away the AV, reduce the damage from subsequent turns due to the burn there, but it took Zoroark's life in the process. We're also seeing the Terra Dark from the Oranguru to reduce the damage from any dark moves headed its way, so that Quaylectra just can't immediately shut down Trick Room just by brute force. So let's go ahead and take a look at game 2. I'm actually pretty excited for this set. Pokeballs are out here in game number 2, and Darkbadger's leading with Jumpluff and Mudsdale. Meanwhile, Quaylectra leading with Torkoal and Scovillain this time. Let's take a look here, and Torkoal's going to make a quick exit, reserve the Drought for later, knowing that the Rain Dance is incoming, so Palisand's going to be the one leading us off here. Meanwhile, Scovillain Fire Fangs into the Jumpluff, trying to get it off the field so it can't keep resetting the rain here. It's going to take a little bit of chip damage from the Rocky Helmet and Life Orb, but at the same time, the Earthquake from Mudsdale goes ahead and finishes it off and does some chip damage into Palisand. Oranguru comes in to try and turn the tides here, while Jumpluff switches out into Quaylectra. Palisand with the Terra Grass to reduce the damage of high horsepower aimed into it, and to boost the damage of Giga Drain aimed into the Mudsdale, which with the AV is keeping the Mudsdale pretty healthy. In the meantime, Oranguru is able to safely set up a Trick Room situation here. Quaylectra uses Terra Fighting, interesting enough. Close combat from the Mudsdale going into the Palisand here. Chilling Water into the Palisand to activate that water compaction. No weakness policy this time going to be activated thanks to Terra Grass, but the Aura Sphere follow-up, boosted by the Terra Fighting, boosted by its ability, it's going to go ahead and KO the Palisand. And here we are. Here's the moneymaker though. Torkoal in prime position under Trick Room immediately clears up both Quaylectra and Mudsdale. Even if it weren't able to, the Instruct following up from Oranguru would have surely have done the job. That only leaves the Jumpluff here and King Gambit. That just about spells curtains with Quaylectra in prime position under Trick Room here. The Eruption just immediately going to take it out. Darkbadger forced to try and sucker punch the Torkoal to potentially reduce the damage from the eruption, but with the Instruct coming in and falling behind that, it surely would have knocked it out as well. Great game on both sides. With Darkbadger, it looked like they were in pretty controlling position of the match, but as soon as Quaylectra found that position where they could safely do Trick Room that they couldn't do at the beginning of the game, they were able to turn the game on its head. So well played to them. One more game for the marbles, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are in game number 3, where Darkbadger is leading off with Kingambit and Morgrim versus Quaylectra's Oranguru and Palossand. Palossand immediately going to Terra Grass here. Morgrim's going to fake out into the Oranguru, but thanks to Inner Focus, it's not going to cause it to flinch there. Meanwhile, Sucker Punch from the Kingambit launched into the Palossand there, and Oranguru is content to use the Chilling Water into the Palossand, activate that Water Compaction. Earth Power from the Palossand is going to take Kingambit to nearly the end of its life, but the Citrus Berry heals it back up a little bit, still under 50%. Meanwhile, Morgrim's going to set up the Light Screen as Mudsdale switches in to kind of save the team from some pain. Palossand is cool with just shoring up though, healing back up, while the Oranguru sets up Trick Room pretty safely. We're going to see a double switch here from the Kingambit and the Quaylectra coming in. Giga Drain going to the Kingambit, doing some chip damage, but not enough to KO it, of course. Oranguru still just wanting to Chilling Water into the Palossand, further activate that Water Compaction, reduce the amount of damage Kingambit and Mudsdale are going to be able to do. However, Quaylectra in position with the Terra fighting that we saw last time. We see the Earth Power Instruct Earth Power, and a critical hit almost takes out the Quaylectra. If not for the Light Screen, the initial chip damage may have been enough to have caused it to be knocked out here, but instead it launches an Aura Sphere into the Palossand and takes it out, as well as itself, thanks to the Life Orb. The Torkoal is coming in to take in Palossand's place, Mudsdale in place of Quaylectra. Gonna see a Protect here, just expecting some damage from the Mudsdale. The Fake Out one more time, aimed into the Oranguru. Again, it's not going to affect it thanks to the Inner Focus here. Chilling Water going into the Morgrim though. We see an Eruption here, and it's not enough to get the KO here. And we see an Earthquake. It's actually going to knock out Morgrim and do some chip damage into Torkoal, which is crucial that it goes ahead of Oranguru, underspeeding it under Trick Room, as it's going to reduce the damage of the instructed Eruption for this following turn. Combined with the Light Screen and the AV, that's pretty crucial here. We're now outside of Trick Room as Kingambit comes in. The Scovillain has switched in place of Oranguru while the Torkoal protects, and we see the Iron Head was headed for the Oranguru, does some chip damage into the Scovillain, while the High Horsepower was aimed at Torkoal to try and finish it off. Now that Scovillain's under the sun, it's poised to do some damage here, but instead it goes for Rage Powder, crucially throwing off the Sucker Punch from the Kingambit, but it takes the High Horsepower as a result. This lets Torkoal use a Heat Wave here, which does some damage into the Mudsdale, but not enough, and crucially misses the Kingambit there. Unfortunate for Quaylectra these last few turns as far as RNG goes. Oranguru comes back in, takes an Iron Head for its troubles, but we're just going to see an Earthquake. It's going to finish off both the Oranguru and the Kingambit. One final turn here, as either the Eruption or the Earthquake will take it here, or the High Horsepower, what have you. We just go for Earthquake just to avoid any misses, and that's more than enough to take out the Torkoal. What a match. On the very last legs, the Mudsdale is still left standing. That was really fun to watch and came down really crucially to the wire. So, well, I gotta give some congratulations to Darkbadger, of course, for winning this match at the final hour there. Quaylectra put up a very large resistance. Like, they were in control in the very last match, and just unfortunately RNG slipped away from them. Several unfortunate turns that could have kept up the pace for the match, but just allowed Darkbadger to slip through the cracks and get some crucial KOs of their own. But we can see, we've mentioned several times how the Torkoal Oranguru strategy is kind of the centerpiece of what they're going for, and just using it off the bat, teams have been prepping for that, and if it ends up getting shut down, ends up just not working out, the rest of Quaylectra's team just kind of falls apart. But they've seemed to have found new life, especially using the Palossand, and kind of repositioning using Oranguru and Palossand together, and then bringing in Torkoal late game once they're able to safely set up the Trick Room through the Oranguru. We even see, even with weather countermeasures, right? They're smartly saving the Torkoal for another day, and using just the general bulk of Palisand and Oranguru to get by until they can get that position. So I do want to shout out, any criticism that I have for the draft overall is being offset by the player maneuvering very well, in my opinion. That being said, Darkbadger, I think you got off a little bit easy on this one. Several misses, several crits are unfortunate. The game might have looked a little bit different in the in-game, but nonetheless, still congratulations. In the number 2 seed at this time, we mentioned before that they're fighting up against Ryu in week number 7, so that'll determine who gets the final number 1 and number 2 seeds, but they are locked for playoffs, so congrats to them for that as well. Last but not least, we do have Eltrim versus KeystoneRecords as our final matchup of the week, and this could really go either way. I've mentioned my admiration for KeystoneRecords team and how they're just generally bulky and have a wide variety of tools to handle just about any of the matchups that could be thrown into their way. And even here, you have pretty quirky things that you could toss out, like the skill swap mirror herb strategy that we've seen on Umbreon occasionally outside of this draft. Even Espeon can skill swap if you need to do so that you get the unaware ability off of the Dondozo, and then with your own boosted special attack, if you have the mirror herb, you get to blast it back for very strong damage, right? Now again, that's kind of cheeky, kind of cheesy, so I'm not necessarily saying that's the route to go through. Again, just highlighting that there are several tools available for them, even if we're looking at like standard stuff. Arboliva with the Strength Sap with Elite Seed, Garganical, of course, with the chip damage from the Salt Cure is all going to be crucial for handling Dondozo. That being said, though, Eltrim has started to explore their options outside of Dondozo, so it really depends on how well they can position things like Sylveon. They recently picked up Espathra as a way of getting some extra speed on their team without necessarily needing to put up the Talonflame. It also helps to support things like the Sylveon and the Tatsugiri through the use of Lumina Crash, reducing the special defense of the target Pokemon, as well as doing some pretty decent chip damage, all while getting that speed boost to get set up with. So this, I think, is going to be interesting just because I think this one's unpredictable too. Like, this could go either way. There are a ton of strategies that could be thrown out. I don't think there are any Pokemon that I would rather see over the other, so I'm just going to leave it up to the players to show us what they can do. All right, so leading into the first match, we see that Eltrim is opted for Tatsugiri, Talonflame, Sylveon, Espathra, Serena, and Skuntank. KeystoneRecords opting for Bennett, Skeledirge, Clodsire, Arboliva, Garganical, and Espeon. So some interesting options from both players here. We haven't seen Bennett yet, and we're not seeing Dondozo here as well, so interested to see how this turns out. Espeon and Bennett leading off for KeystoneRecords, meanwhile Serena and Espathra leading off for Eltrim. Eltrim's going to switch out Espathra into Talonflame very quickly, while the Espeon sets up a light screen and Serena counter sets up its own light screen. Bennett, though, is going to set up a Trick Room to lead us off here. Gets a knockoff into the Talonflame, find its eject button. Serena's going to set up a Reflect here just to help out. Meanwhile, Espeon does the exact same here. Will-O-Wisp is going to be aimed at the Bennett and misses, unfortunately, and we're going to save the Bennett for later as it switches out into the Garganical, who's not going to be able to get burned if the Will-O-Wisp was aimed that way. The Drop Kick aimed at the Espeon, though, is going to do some chip damage. Meanwhile, the Power Gem encounter is going to take out the Talonflame. Espathra comes in to try and swing the tide here. I was going to take a Rock Slide, but manages to avoid it. Meanwhile, Serena with the Drop Kick into the Garganical this time is going to lower its attack if it launches one. And the Lumina Crash to follow up does a little bit of damage there, and we're bringing Garganical close to the end of its life. If it decides to stay in, the special defense drop may be more than enough to KO it from this point. See, in the Power Gem aimed into this Espathra does a little bit of chip damage, but not too much here. Helping Hand from the Serena just to help out the Lumina Crash. Explosion coming out from Garganical. It's not going to affect the Bennett that switched in there, but it doesn't KO the Serena or Espathra either. They're at lower health, but not out and done yet. Lumina Crash boosted by Helping Hand into the Bennett. It's set to go down as well if another Helping Hand Lumina Crash comes through. Clydesdale comes in with Terra Dragon, though, and we aim the Lumina Crash into the Clodsire. Interesting enough, Destiny Bond came out from the Banet though, so they're not going to be able to attack it the following turn without taking some casualties. Poison Jab into the Espathra is going to take it down. That leaves the cleanup crew to Serena and the Tatsugiri. Tatsugiri gonna Draco Meteor into the Clodsire, immediately clear it off the field, especially with that special defense drop. Meanwhile, Banet's gonna take a Trop Kick for all of his troubles, just before it sets up a Trick Room. Espeon comes out here at the end of the game. Who is faster, who's slower? Terra Dragon from the Tatsugiri. We're helping handing from the Serena to boost its power. We see a knockout from the Banet to clear off the Light Clay there, and the Power Gem into the Serena is not going to be enough to take out the Serena. Meanwhile, the boosted Terra Dragon Draco Meteor is more than enough to take out the Espeon here. Another knockoff from the Banet, but it's surely going to go down, and it does to the Trop Kick here. Very interesting game one here. We saw the screens from both players immediately come out. We see the option for KeystoneRecords to use a Trick Room to their advantage. It's the first time that we've seen that, so pretty interesting stuff here. And we see Espathra just picked up as a trade for Eltrim here, and they're trying to make the most use of it as they can right away. Let's move on to game number 2. Pokeballs are out for game number 2, and for KeystoneRecords side, we're going to see Banet lead off with Espeon versus Serena and Espathra for Eltrim here. Serena's going to switch out into Skuntank, which shows off its air balloon. Meanwhile, the Espeon is content to go off with a light screen. Espathra gonna take a gamble on a Hypnosis into Banet, but it misses, allowing the Banet to set up the Trick Room here. The Banet is going for knockoff, does a huge chunk to the Espathra here and finds its Focus Sash. It's good information for game number 3 if it gets that far. Meanwhile, Gunk Shot from the Skuntank, taking advantage of the Trick Room, is going to find Espeon and do a huge chunk to it. Espathra is going to follow up with the Lumina Crash into the Espeon. Not going to do a chunk of damage, but the special defense drop may help it in a later turn. Well, we wouldn't find out though, because Espeon switches out into the Clodsire. I'm going to switch out the Espathra into the Serena. Another knockoff is taken and finds the Light Clay, gets rid of that. Another Gunk Shot aimed for Espeon finds Clodsire instead. Following turn, Skuntank tries to Sucker Punch here. While it fails though, Clodsire with the Rock Slide does a chunk of damage to the Skuntank, while the Banet, reason for the Sucker Punch fails, the Will-O-Wisp into the Serena. Serena with a Trop Kick into the Clodsire though, gonna reduce its attack stat for the following turns though, so that might help out. The Banet switches out into the Espeon in the final turn of Trick Room to set it up. Sucker Punch fails once again as a result. Meanwhile, Clodsire getting some more chip damage off with Rock Slide here, and Serena trying to last ditch get a light screen up to help salvage this game. Another Sucker Punch fails from the Skuntank, and it looks like Espeon's moving last and setting up Trick Room. It seems Trop Kick one more time into the Clodsire, just slowly getting some chip damage down, but Clodsire getting more chip damage down into both Pokemon with the Rock Slide. And there is the Trick Room from Espeon, setting up the following turns. Clodsire switching into the Skeledirge here to take the Trop Kick. Does so pretty healthily, pretty handily. And the Gunk Shot from the Skuntank into the Espeon just before taking advantage of the Trick Room to get rid of it and get it off the field. Alright, Espeon is going to be replaced by the Clodsire, however, so just resetting the position. The Skeledirge is going to Terra Fairy, crucially reducing the damage of the Sucker Punch from the Skuntank, while Clodsire Rock Slides one more time, KOs the Skuntank, and the Skeledirge Shadow Balls the Serena to finish it off here. That just leaves the Espathra, and let's see, and the Tatsugiri to try and clean up this time. Another Rock Slide KOs the Espathra, does a pretty decent chunk to the Tatsugiri as well. Shadow Ball nearly finishes the job there, leaves it on 8%. Water Absorb does a decent chunk to the Skeledirge, but the Water Absorb nullifies the damage onto the Clodsire, so that's going to be the end of the game. Rock Slide under Trick Room, finishing off the Tatsugiri there. So good adjustments from KeystoneRecords this time, like taking full advantage of the Trick Room and crucially throwing off the Sucker Punches from Skuntank through the use of switches, the use of Will-O-Wisp. Eltrim just wasn't able to find damage on the board once that Trick Room had gone up as a result. So pretty cool game so far, and has taken us to a game number 3. And for the 8th and final game of today of this week, we have Banet and Espeon leading off for KeystoneRecords, and Serena Espathra leading off for Eltrim here. Gonna see a similar turn to game one where the light screen leads off for Espeon and a light screen from Serena as well. But in the meantime, Espathra misses another hypnosis aimed at Banette, allowing it to set up the Trick Room one more time very safely. Another knockoff aimed into Espathra, does a huge chunk of damage there. Serena with a drop kick into the Espeon though, just before it's able to set up a Reflect. Lumina Crash aimed into the Espeon to get a little bit more chip damage there and bring it closer to the end of its life. All right, we see a Will-O-Wisp from the Banette. It's going to cripple the Serena with the burn here. Another drop kick into the Espeon, but with the Reflect and with the burn, it's nowhere near enough to get the KO here. Meanwhile, Espeon, now underspeeding the Espathra thanks to Speed Boost, knocks it out with the Power Gem. Eltrim brings in Sylveon to try and salvage what's left of this game here, while Espeon escapes in favor of Skeledirge. Sylveon with a Protect to scout the next move, the next knockoff from the Banette. And the Serena with another drop kick finds Skeledirge as its target. It's not going to be effective against it. Serena still hurting from the burn, is essentially crippled thanks to the Reflect as well. Serena with a helping hand, all it can really do is support its Sylveon right now as it goes down to the Torch Song. And now a special attack boost with Skeledirge makes it really scary for Eltrim here at the end of this game. Another knockoff from Banette. And the Hyper Voice from Sylveon. It's not going to do enough damage versus that light screen that was set up earlier. We're out of Trick Room here, so Tatsugiri gets a chance to do something here. Goes for the Icy Wind, which, as it finds Espeon, was a pretty good option because that might allow it to outspeed it if it were still alive. Fortunately, the Hyper Voice is more than enough to KO it, but not enough to KO the Banette, crucially, as it allows it to set up a Trick Room for the Garganacl that has come in. And here comes the Garganacl Terra Normals. Is it going to use Explosion immediately? No, it's not. We're just going to go ahead and get the Rock Slide here, get some immediate damage onto the Tatsugiri, takes 60% of its life. And the Destiny Bond from the Banette gets touched by the Icy Wind, so that's going to take down the Tatsugiri as the Banette goes down as well. Eltrim in a pretty tight situation here with only Sylveon with Terra Ground left to try and salvage this. Rock Slide from the Garganacl, going to do a pretty good chunk of damage there. Torch Song to follow up, same thing, way too much damage, and a flinch after the Rock Slide. That's going to seal it. A double up under Trick Room is sure to knock out the Sylveon. It tries to protect here. Scouts out the Explosion. Crucially enough, that might save it some pain there, but there's still another Trick Room turn after that. With a +1 boost from the Torch Song, that's going to seal the deal versus Sylveon as the double protect fails on the very last turn of Trick Room there. What a match, and great adjustments from KeystoneRecords, like really taking full advantage of the Trick Room option there. Unfortunately, Eltrim not able to shut down Trick Room. No option, no use or option of taunt there. Had to rely on Hypnosis for from Espathra to try and nullify that. But with it missing Banette, with each time they led with it, they weren't able to stop the Trick Room. And even with that, KeystoneRecords was able to position their Espeon to get Trick Room up in game number 2, as we just saw. Really good stuff. So in a pivot from the usual, where KeystoneRecords just kind of goes for the bulky offense, not really worried about speed control at all, they shifted their focus onto using Banette's Trick Room and Espeon's Trick Room options as well. Espeon going full support actually with the double screens too. I thought was pretty cool, and it pretty much just shut down anything that Eltrim could do. There was no taunt in place to try and stop the Trick Room from Banette. And even then you have to worry about the Espeon setting up Trick Room, which you can't stop with a taunt thanks to the use of Magic Bounce. All you can really do is rely on a fake out at that point, which you would only have Gothorita for, and that's pretty scary because it has a bad matchup to Banette unless you commit Terra to it. So Eltrim a little bit jammed up by KeystoneRecords strategy, so well played and well prepped to them going into these final weeks. That puts KeystoneRecords in the third in the standings. Eltrim is now with a 2-4 record. Is relying on week number 7 to determine if they can snag a 4th seed. There's a number of losses that has to happen, and of course they have to win out as well with a 3-4 record. Again, and some of that relies on how well I do in my final week. If I win, I kind of close the door. If I lose, the option is open to some of the other players there. Either way, literally very exciting week. I like all the matches that we were able to view. Well played to all the winners of this week, and good luck in the very final week of this season of the VGC Draft League. We'll continue our coverage as usual. Of course, my matchup will be against Quaylectra in week number 7, so we'll touch base on that when it comes through. Either way, if you like this kind of content from me, just leave a like and a comment, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.